The second reading of Parshas Vaera makes a strange turn. Really, since the beginning of the book, there's an ongoing narrative. A narrative of bondage, of slavery, a narrative of extraordinary heroism. We get introduced to the sister and the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu. We get introduced to Moshe Rabbeinu himself. And then Moshe Rabbeinu gets introduced to God. And there's this whole event that takes place at the burning bush. And then Moshe Rabbeinu starts off his mission, and it doesn't go well. And that's how Parshas Vaera opens. And God reassures Moshe Rabbeinu that things will go very well. You just have to stay the course. In the second reading, the Torah begins suddenly to speak about lineage. Chapter 6 of the book of Exodus, verse 14, Eile Rashe Beis Havosam, these are the heads of their fathers' homes. Bnei Reuven B'chor Yisrael, the children of Reuven. He is the firstborn of Yisrael, which is the alternate name for Yaakov. And we have names. Chanoich, Ufalu, Chertzen, Becharmi. Eila Mishpachos Reuven. These are the families of Reuven. So Rashi obviously is perturbed. What in heaven is going on over here? Why are we talking about Reuven, Reuven's children? And the even stranger thing is we're going to talk about Shimon's children. In verse 15 we say, Uvnei Shimon, Yemuel, V'yomin, V'oyad, V'yochim, V'tzecha, V'shol, Ben Aknanis, Eila Mishpachos Shimon. And then we're going to go in verse 16 into Mishpachos Halevi, Ve'elu Shmeis B'nei Levi. These are the children of Levi, Tel Dosam, by their order of birth, Gershon, Ukahos, Umurari. And then it gets even stranger. Ushnei Chaya Levi, Sheva, V'shleishim Mas Shana. Levi lives for 137 years. We don't hear how long Reuven lives or how Shimon lives, but we do hear how long Levi lives. And then we start hearing about details of Levi's family, which we didn't hear about in Reuven or Shimon's family. But then afterwards, with regard to Yehuda and the subsequent Shvatim, there is no information whatsoever. We're going to get a lot of information in the family of Moshe Rabbeinu. So Rashi says that the purpose of these verses, meaning the verses of Reuven and Shimon, was actually only to get to the verses of Levi. Since the Torah felt a need, Hashem feels a need now, as we get introduced to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu begins his formal role as the Redeemer of the Jewish people. So we have to establish the bona fides, the lineage of Levi, ad Moshe v'Aaron, until we can actually trace the lineage of Moshe and Aaron. And all of this is b'shvil Moshe v'Aaron. The whole reason that we're doing this, tracing the lineage of Levi and getting down to Moshe v'Aaron, is because Moshe and Aaron were the point here all along. And because we need to do that, so hischali yachasam derech tel dosam Reuven. So therefore, the Torah begins. Okay, instead of just introducing Levi, we talk about Reuven, talk about Shimon, talk about Levi, and then we take it forward from there. Now, there's an addition in some versions of Rashi, ubepsikta gdelo reisi, in a compilation of Torah tradition and teaching called Psikta Rabasi. Rashi says, I saw lefi shekinteram, that there's a secondary reason as to why we had to emphasize the families of Reuven and Shimon here. And that's because Yaakov strongly rebuked them. Yaakov Avinu, l'shleisha shvatim halalu, the first three tribes, b'shas Moshe, at the time of his passing. He really, really spoke harshly and rebuked very strongly Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. So because that's the case, here the Torah repeats their names and their families in much more glowing prose. So Chazar Akasav v'Yachasam Kan, the Torah now returns and traces the lineage here, levadam, them alone, loymar shechashuv mehem, as if to convey the message to you, these children of Yaakov were also of great prominence, of great importance. So that gives us a little bit of an appreciation as to what's going on here. Before Moshe Rabbeinu will set out on his mission to deal with Aaron, we need to know exactly where they come from. And we'll see in today's class why it's so important to know where they come from. And because we're going to talk about Levi, it only makes sense that we should start from the beginning, which is Reuven, Shimon, and then Levi. Once we get to Levi, then we talk in detail about the family of Levi. And Rashi adds this idea of the need to emphasize the importance and underscore the virtue and value of these three tribes, specifically because they didn't get such rosy treatment when Yaakov Avinu, the words of Yaakov are recorded on his deathbed to his children. So let's take a look now further in Rashi. V'shnei Chaya Levi. Why do we talk about the years of Levi? If this is about lineage, not about history, not about amount of years that somebody lived, we don't know how long Yehuda lived, or Yisachar, or Zvulun. We only know about Yosef because he was the king. But why do we know about Levi? So Rashi says, Lama nimnu shneisav shalevi. He actually asked the question for you, which is quite unusual. Why were the years of Levi enumerated? And his answer is, Lahidia, to make known Kama Yemei HaShibud. What was the duration of actual slavery and bondage? We know how long the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim for, but for how long was it really in a slave-like reality where the Jewish people suffered torture and torment? And why would that make a difference? What's the difference how long Levi lived? And Rashi says, because we have a tradition that calls Zman she'echad ben hashvatim, as long as one of the actual children of Yaakov was Kayam alive, lo haya shibud, then there was no bondage, no slavery, no torment, no torture. Shenemar, it says, how do we know this? We have a tradition. Where's the scripture? So we do have a scripture, because it says, Vayomas Yosef, Yosef died, v'chol echav, and all of his brothers. So we know only after Yosef died and all of his brothers died, then it says, V'achar kach, then Vayakom melech chadash, a new king rose, which can, as we learned earlier, can mean two different things, whether it's literally a new king who may believe he didn't know about the history, or was the same king who ignored the history. But at any rate, V'levi had ech yamim al kulam, Levi lived longest. And because Levi lived longest, that's why we know the years of Levi, and this gives us an inkling of when the actual bondage and the actual slavery began. So now we know why we're talking about Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. We know why we're talking about the children, the family specifically of Levi, and we know why the years of Levi are enumerated. And in the balance of the next few verses, we talk actually about the family of Moshe Rabbeinu b'nei Gershon, Livni, V'Shimi, L'mishpachesam. We have the children of Gershon, Livni, and Shimi. Then we have b'nei Kahos, the children of Kahos, Amram, V'Yitzar, V'Chevrim, V'Uziel, V'Shnei Chaya Kahos. How many are the years of Kahos? Sholish, V'Shloishim, U'mi'as Shana. He lives for 133 years. Now, why is that relevant? And then, interestingly, we hear about not only Shnei Chaya Kahos, but the Torah will speak about Ubnei Merari, Machli and Mushi. These are Mishpachos Levi L'Tel Deisam. Why is that relevant? To know the years of Kahos. And in verse 20 we say, Vayikach Amram es Yecheved Edasei. Amram marries Yecheved, his aunt. Loila Isha, he takes her for a wife. Vatelid le'es Aaron v'es Moshe. Now we hear of the birth of Moshe, Aaron and Moshe. V'shnei Chaye Amram Sheva u'shleishim u'me'as shana. And Amram lives for 137 years. So why is that relevant? Why do we have to know how long Kahos lived? Or why do we have to know how long Amram lived? I know we have to know how long Levi lived, because that's how we were able to discern how many years the Jewish people were actually under the thumb of the Pharaoh in a slave-like manner. So Rashi says, Mecheshben zeh, from this cheshben of Shnei Chaya Kahos and then Shnei Amram, life of Kahos, life of Amram, so from this calculation, Anu L'meidim, we can learn Al Moshe b'nei Yisrael with regard to the settlement of the Jewish people in Egypt, Arba Me'es Shana, 400 years. Shamar HaKasav, the Pasuk speaks about this earlier in chapter 15 in Genesis, and later on in this book, in the 12th chapter, it will say that the Jewish people were in Egypt for 400 years. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that math doesn't add up. The arithmetic simply doesn't work. Shaloi be'eretz Mitzrayim levada hayu, that it wasn't 400 years actually in Eretz Mitzrayim. And how do we know this? But it has to be calculated, Ella miyayim shenelad Yitzchak. It must be from the birth of Yitzchak, that the gestation of the Jewish people, as from a family to nation, in its entirety, from the birth of Yitzchak to the birth of the nation in its entirety, the whole span was 400 years. And the proof is because Kahos was miyerd Mitzrayim haya. Kahos was alive. He's counted amongst the 70 souls, so we know that he was alive. He walked in through the customs. He checked his passport, so to speak. So now, Chashev Kol Shneisef, take all of his years, 133. Okay. And then V'chol Shneis Amram, all of Amram's years. We believe that Amram passes before Moshe Rabbeinu takes Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. And then take Shemainim Shel Moshe, take the 80 of Moshe. So you're like Sim saying, you're still not going to find Abram Meis Shana. You have 133 plus 137 plus 80 gives you 350. 350 years. And then, of course, it's not like Kahos lived 133 years and then Amram was born. And then Amram lived 137 years and then Moshe was born. There were many years in which these generations lived in unison. So in that case, it's clear that it's impossible that the Jewish people actually lived in Mitzrayim for 400 years. I want to skip the next couple of psukim to bring it to its successful close. So the Torah, from verse 21 to verse 25, the Torah will go through the families of Yitzhar, and then we'll talk about Uziel. We're going to talk about Aaron and his marriage and his children, the children of Kahos, and Elazar ben Aaron, and whom he married. And then the Torah concludes, and this is how the second reading concludes, Hu Aaron Moshe. This is Aaron and Moshe. Asher Omar Hashem lahem, that God said to them, Hoitziu es bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. Take the children of Israel out of the land of Mitzrayim. Al tzivaisam, on their, according to their hosts or arrangements. Heim hamedabrim el parim melech Mitzrayim. They are the very ones. Yep, you got it. These people you got introduced to, this lineage, traced back to Levi, to Yaakov. These are the ones. They are the ones who speak to the Pharaoh. Lahaitzi is bnei Yisrael, with the intent and purpose of taking the Jewish people from Mitzrayim. Who? Moshe v'Aaron. They are Moshe and Aaron. So we have 3 times Moshe v'Aaron mentioned. We have the words of who Moshe v'Aaron at the beginning of verse 26. And this is the Moshe v'Aaron that God spoke to and told them to take the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. Verse 27 starts with Heim hamedabrim al parai. They are the ones. And verse 27 ends with who? Moshe v'Aaron. Yep, they're the ones. That's the same Moshe v'Aaron. So let's take a look in Rashi. What's the who Moshe v'Aaron? Heim hamedabrim. Who Moshe v'Aaron? Rashi says, in the beginning of verse 26, it says, who Aaron u'Moshe. Elo, these are Shehuzkru l'mayla, who were mentioned earlier, Sheyolda Yecheved la'Amram. These are the sons born of Yecheved to Amram. Who? They are Aaron and Moshe Asher Amar Hashem. That's the same Aaron and Moshe you read about later in the scripture. That God comes and speaks to them. Yep, that's the Moshe v'Aaron. And now Rashi notes that Yesh Bekemes, there are sometimes Shemagdim Aaron l'Moshe. Sometimes it says who Aaron and Moshe. That's how verse 26 begins. But then we take a look at the end of verse 27. It says who Moshe v'Aaron. So is it Moshe and Aaron or Aaron and Moshe? It says Rashi, Yesh Bekemes Shemagdim Aaron l'Moshe. There are times when Aaron comes first. Yesh Bekemes Shemagdim Moshe l'Aaron. There are other verses in which Moshe Rabbeinu was mentioned first. What's the point? We have to have an order. Make up your mind. Either Moshe is most prominent or Aaron is most prominent. Either we follow the years of being born and who was older, or we follow who had the more important mission and purpose, who was really calling the shots and in charge, so to speak, who was the ultimate Eved Hashem. And Rashi says, Lo Yimar, this is to tell you that when it came to their virtues, when it came to their preciousness in Hashem's eyes, when it came to their being the most extraordinary tzaddikim, that you should know Shkulim Ke'achad. They were really equal. Moshe v'Aaron, Aaron and Moshe. Equal in Hashem's eyes. Equally beloved, equally special, equally virtuous. Al tzivaisam, on their arrangements or on their groupings. So Rashi says this means bit tzivaisam, kol tzvam l'shivteim. All of their hosts were arranged according to the shvatim. They went out according, yes, there was 12 sons that came in and 12 tribes that left. Yesh al she'eni ela b'makim ois achas, va'al char b'chatri. Okay, this is a grammar. We don't have time for this. I want to move forward into 27 and get to today's point. Heim hamedabrim. They are the ones. Heim shenitztavu. Rashi says they are the ones who were commanded. Heim shekimu. They are the ones who fulfilled. They got the order. They made it happen. The same ones. They are the ones. Hu Moshe v'Aaron. Heim b'shlichusam. They in their missions. Uvitzidkasam, and in their righteousness. Mitchila v'ad set, from the beginning to the very end. It was Moshe v'Aaron carried the day straight through till the end. So let's take a look now in the Biur HaChumash. The Rebbe asks some very strong questions here. Page Kuf Chav Zayin, near the bottom of the page. Simon Test, the Rebbe asks question number 1. Tzarech Bir, we have to understand this. Ma boyim shnei psukim elu lamdeinu. What do these 2 verses teach us? Do we not know that this is Moshe v'Aaron that was spoken of earlier? I mean, really, do we not know? Do we not know that the Torah mentions Moshe v'Aaron and then goes and traces their lineage, and we have to have another verse that says, oh, by the way, hey, Moshe v'Aaron. Don't think it was a different Moshe v'Aaron, it's the same one. Come on. It's so obvious. Why would the Torah have to spend time and ink to convey this to you? So that's question number 1. It's a very obvious question. Question number 2. L'shem ma ma'idech Rashi u'mafaret. Rashi goes into details. I want to make sure you understand, says Rashi. I want you to know. Eila shehuskru l'mayla. They're the ones who mentioned earlier. You know that, right? Don't. Sheyolda yecheved la'amram. Not the Moshe v'Aaron that were born to some other mother. No. It's the Moshe v'Aaron that Yecheved gave birth, and not some Yecheved had another. No. Yecheved, sheyolda yecheved la'amram. There were other children. There were half children. There's a Snil ben Knaz, a whole story that in between Yecheved and Moshe and Amram separate. But no. These are the ones that Yolda Yecheved la'amram. Yecheved gives birth to Amram. V'harei kol hama'ayin because of l'mayla. Anybody who just takes the time to look in the verses above, Yideh Shemay Shevaron, Yecheved Amram. We'll see. It says it openly. It's a base Levi, took bas Levi. It's this is like, you don't need to be a rocket scientist or forensic accountant to figure it out. So why would Rashi? Who needs the pasuk? And then, as if the pasuk is not superfluous enough, Rashi has to come and emphasize. Make sure you know what this pasuk means. And then number 3, Rashi finishes off with such unusual words: "Says Heim shenitztavu, Heim shekimu." They are the ones. They got the order. They carried it out. Is there really a novelty? We said that the biggest tzaddikim, righteous, virtuous, devoted, loyal, loving servants of God. God gave them a command, and they carried it out. When we know he carried it out, it says Moshe Aaron. Don't think it was another Moshe Aaron that came out of the wings, snuck out of the curtains, and stole the show. No. They got the command, and they were the very same ones who carried it out till the end. Give me a break for Bnei Shalom. What's going on over here? It's like grinding water. There's no point to saying the same thing again and again. Superfluous verses and a seemingly entirely superfluous commentary of Rashi. So the Rebbe says to us, nothing here is superfluous. There is an incredibly important message that's being broadcast in these verses, and Rashi wants to make sure you don't miss it. And this is based on something Rashi said earlier. In the beginning of today's class, we learned the Rashi in the beginning of the reading, where Rashi speaks about Dvar Matarasa Shal Parsha Zu. What is the whole second reading of Vaera coming for? The whole reading seems superfluous. And Rashi said to us, it's not superfluous. It's needed and necessary. Lamdeinu, it comes to instruct and teach us, Heich Nel de Moshe V'Aaron, how Moshe V'Aaron were born, but more so, Ubemin is Yachasu, and to whom do they trace their lineage? In other words, Matarasa Shal Parsha Zu, the purpose of this parsha, He levair es yichudam shel Moshe V'Aaron, is to clarify, in no uncertain terms, the uniqueness of Moshe V'Aaron. Ulahazbir es hasiba, and to explain to you the very reason shedafke heim nivchiru k'shluchos l'Hakadosh Baruch Hu, as to why they were chosen to be Hashem's messengers. Lahitzias bnei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim. So l'shem kach, for this very purpose, meyaches hakasuv l'horeim. The Torah wants not only to tell you who their grandparents were, who their great-grandparents were, the Torah wants to trace the lineage to their actual parents, namely Yocheved and Amram. Why? Because Yocheved and Amram are 2 people we have met already. And what do we know about Yocheved v'Amram? Shepa'alu l'man kiyumei v'hatzelosei shel Am Yisrael. It was Amram and Yocheved who demonstrated tremendous courage and faith and mettle and spiritual strength in order to save and develop the nation of Israel. And this came under fire. By standing against the decree of the Pharaoh when it was politically incorrect, inexpedient, and downright dangerous. Yocheved, well, that's not hard. It requires no imagination there. She did not fulfill the instructions of the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was very explicit. He told them exactly what to do. Kill those babies. In Benu v'Hamita Neisei. The Adarabah not only did not kill the babies, but Hitzilu es Yaldei Yisrael v'Siyalahem. They saved. Ralbag says that the reason we hear about them having Hashem provided for them is, it says that they had wealth to be able to afford milk for everybody. They ran this massive nursery under the nose of the Gestapo. That took tremendous courage and bravery. Amram was a leader who simply fell into depression. A leader who saw his nation being decimated before his very eyes, who saw hopelessness, who saw only death and destruction, who saw babies being killed. What did he do? He did the thing any normal person would do. He gave up. He said, I'm not going to have children. I'm not going to continue this. And he separated from his wife. He said, we can't go on like this. And everybody separated too. And then what happened? And then a little precocious Miriam said to her father, you're worse than the Pharaoh. He said, what? You go to the Rebbe of the Jewish people, you tell me you're worse than Hitler? You're worse than Arafat? How could such a thing be? He said, you are worse, because they decreed against the boys, and you decreed against all Jewish children. You're not bringing girls into the world either. And what did Amram do? Amram, in his incredible humility, says to his daughter, says, wow, he listens to a little girl, and he thinks to himself, I need to have courage. I need to overcome these seemingly daunting and impossible challenges. I need to do the right thing. What does he do? He goes back in a very public way, and he remarries his wife, and doing so, what happens is everybody follows his example. This was a remarkable expression of faith. And he didn't have anybody to lean on or rely on. Eli Wiesel didn't want to have children, didn't want to get married. He said, how could I bring children into such a horrible world? And the Rebbe spoke to him a number of times about the importance of getting married and having children and doing what we have to do. And when he got married in Jerusalem. The Rebbe sent a dozen long stem roses to his wedding, with a Mazel Tov note. Right? And that for a person like that who went through what he went through, it took tremendous courage. For the Holocaust survivors to go and marry and build families. We can't even imagine the courage that it took.
Did he ultimately have children?
Yes, he did. So this was Amram. This is Amram and Yocheved. And here, my friends, is the point. Now we can understand why Moshe and Aaron were chosen for this mission. And here the Rebbe breaks it down remarkably into two reasons. There's two ideas that are being played out to us. Number one, Moshe v'Aaron zachu b'shlichazu. Moshe v'Aaron merited the shlichus k'schar u'gemul al ma'aseyim, as a reward, as a remuneration for their acts of bravery and courage on behalf of the Jewish people. Al ma'aseyim hagdolim shel areim, because of the remarkable deeds, the great acts of Yocheved and Miriam, Laman Am Yisrael, they did for Am Yisrael. Hashem rewarded them with such wonderful children. So what's the message for us? You work hard, you don't get credit, but you should know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was ein mekapeach schar kol beria. Everybody will get all the remuneration that they deserve. Moshe and Aaron's parents did what they did, and they got the greatest reward. They had such amazing children. Number two, another very important message. Moshe v'Aaron yorshu es tchuneseim shel harem. Moshe v'Aaron, because they came from their parents, they actually had their parents' characteristics, the qualities of their parents. V'lachein, and therefore hayibakaychem lehisgaber al akshiyim. It was not easy to be Moshe v'Aaron when you started this. At the end of the book, it's easy. It was not easy in the beginning. Before all the miracles, and a normal person would just give up. And they stood against all of these seemingly insurmountable difficulties. B'fnei b'tzua hashlichas, the things that stood in the way of the carrying out of this mission God gave them, and this is because they had strength. From where did they have strength? From their parents. And the same way their parents had strength, they passed on that same spiritual DNA, that same strength to their children. Kishem shaharei polu neged gzeres parei, just as their parents, so many decades earlier, had violated the will of the Pharaoh and bravely defied his instructions and didn't think and make calculations of, so what will be, why bother, sink into depression and despondency. There really is no way out. But they stood ad kadei mesiras nefesh, to the point of self-sacrifice. So too, Moshe v'Aaron had the strength. They had to get it from somewhere. And Zui, my dear friends, the Rebbe tells us this is ultimately mashma'usam shel shnei psukim elu. This is the message. This is really the purpose of these last two psukim, ha'chaismim es haparsha, that kind of close out the second reading. Message one. Hu aharenu Moshe. This is Arnu Moshe. Asher Omar Hashem lehem, that God said to them, Heitziyu as bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, take the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim, al tzivayseim, meaning Elu shehuzkuru l'mayla, the ones who were mentioned earlier, and Rashi says three important worlds. Sheyolda Yocheved la'Amram, that Yocheved gave birth to Amram, meaning Moshe ve'Aaron and bneihem shel Yocheved ve'Amram, they are the children of Yocheved ve'Amram, v'lachein zachu b'shlichazu, and that's why they merited to have this incredible mission. That's why they were chosen by God for this very, very historic mandate of Yitzei bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. It's k'gmul al ma'aseh areim. It's a reward for their parents' deed. That's why Yolda Yocheved la'Amram. That's why Yocheved gave birth to Amram, because she was Yocheved and he was Amram. Number two, hey Mamedabrim. They are the ones who speak. They are the ones who go and give the orders to the Pharaoh. Lahitzi bnei Yisrael. And Rashi says the words, Heim shenitztavu, Heim shekimu. They got the command, the order. They carried it out. In other words, loidak etzem hashlichus. Not only they merited, they were privileged to receive the mission. Elagam kimu b'poil. Why they got the mission was because this was the reward for Amram and Yocheved. How they did the mission is b'schus hareim, is because of what they inherited from their parents. Since their parents gave them, bequeathed to them, the spiritual strength to carry out the shlichus in its entirety. Despite all the difficulties and obstacles. That's why they were able to do it. In other words, there's a dual message being played out in the second reading of Parshas Vaera. And the dual message, and that's why we have to have the psukim closing out at the end. Rashi clearly spells out for us. This is, they got the mission because of who their parents were. They were able to do what they did because of who their parents were. Two separate things. One is a message of reward, of Hashem calculating and paying, so to speak, forward after a person does what they're not paying forward, but paying after. The parents did what they did. They received their remuneration and the righteous reward with having such children. Number two, sometimes a person thinks, I don't have the koyach. How am I going to do this? I know I got the mission, but I can't carry it out. You can. Yes, you can carry it out. Why? Look at where you come from. There's a beautiful Hasidic melody in Russian words, and the words are Chachmi Chudi Nashi Bachi Dobri. Even though we're poor, but we had nice grandparents. So whatever, it was a peasant song. But the Hasidim took the song, appropriated it, and this is the message. We may be impoverished. We may not have the great spiritual merits. But we got Shena Babas and say this. We had beautiful ancestry. The ancestry is Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And everybody knows the ancestry that they have. Parents and grandparents, generations came before. They gave us the koyach not to give up in the 11th hour and, so to speak, carry the football through till the end, till touchdown, till the coming of Mashiach. And B'Meira Ubi Amenu. Amen.